Well, welcome back, everyone, to another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants episode. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome in as we get to the chance to explore with all the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth. Now, we are really thrilled today because we are back with our friends at the Toronto Zoo. Now, once a month, we get to join with our zoo friends to highlight all sorts of amazing conservation and adventure stories. Today, we've got something a little bit different for you. But before we dive in with that, I want to note we do have a Kahoot today. So if you want to bring up this game pin on a separate tab in your computer, we'll play along with a little 4-question quiz on plants between our talk and our Q&A. Now, as I mentioned, today's a little different. And back in December, I had the chance to go visit the zoo in person and check out their new amazing greenhouse space. They've got some of the coolest plant collections I've ever seen in the world. And so today, we're going to be joining our friend Mary Ellen and a special guest expert to talk about their special greenhouse space and learn all sorts of stuff that they have on the go. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Mary Ellen and our zoo team. Thank you so much for joining us today, and take us away. Thanks, Mary Ellen.
Hello. Thank you so much, Jesse. We're so excited to be kicking off the new year here with our line of videos that we have coming up for the rest of the school year. We're so excited. Before we get started with our fantastic, amazing greenhouse program today, learning all about these amazing plants behind us, I am just going to say our land acknowledgement for here in Toronto. So we would like to say that we would like to acknowledge that the land that we are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We would also like to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. Thank you so much, Jesse. So as Jesse said, my name is Mary Ellen. You might recognize me from our past videos we've been doing for the last couple of years over the school year, but I also have with me my friend Ben here today. Now, Ben works in this amazing greenhouse that we're in right now that we're going to be learning all about, but we're going to stay mostly inside today. I don't know where everyone else is from in the world right now, but it is very cold here in Toronto. It's about -20 degrees Celsius today. And yet we have all these incredible tropical plants around us right now. So we're going to learn from Ben a little bit more about them, why and how we have them here at the zoo. But to give you a bit of a big picture, we're going to brave it outside for just a minute to show you how big this greenhouse actually is. So we're going to head outside here. Ooh, I can feel the cold already. We're going to flip our camera and we're going to show you how big our Toronto Zoo greenhouse is. And you're going to get to learn from the expert himself here. So this is Ben for scale. So we have our main greenhouse here. And then it has not only 2, but 3 separate compartments in it. So this is how large of a greenhouse we have at the zoo. And it's home to, how many would you say maybe, Ben, on average plants?
Oh, when I originally counted, it was about 5,000 different plants.
Wow, there we go. So we're maybe going to try and learn about 1/10 of them today, let's say. That'll be our goal. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it back to Ben here, and we're going to head back inside and start our program.
Okay, follow me. We're going to go in.
There we go.
500 plants. That's our goal. 500. Let's do it.
Both of us as people with glasses, coming inside a tropical space like this for our winter, we tend to fog up, which is good. It gives us a minute just to kind of calm down and get ready and then start appreciating what we're dealing with here. So this greenhouse here, we've actually just done the renovation. It's been almost exactly a year since we started this. All of these plants here, they were in our collection to begin with. This was our tropical plant collection. This was actually where we produced all the plants for the zoo site, growing them from seeds all the way up to big trees. See, I'm already fogging up here. And so what happened was we got a lovely grant from the government, and we were able to actually open all this space up for the public to showcase our diverse collection of plants in their garden bed form here. Everything was in pots before, but now everything is in the ground, or almost everything is in the ground, so that we can really show it off as good as we can. Yeah, so as we kind of walk in here, you can kind of see how really full it is right now. Obviously in Canada, our winters are cold. We do not have the ability to keep a lot of these plants outside year round. And so this is a great space to show people like the colors, the textures, the smells of all these different plants from all over the world. Right off the bat, this section here is all tropical colors, textures. We really had lots and lots of fun when we were building it. And we wanted to show these plants off. There's so many cool things going on all the time with plants. And as we kind of push through, you can see them overhead, you can see them underfoot. You want to be like fully immersed in kind of the plant world that we have here. So while we're kind of appreciating all the plants, just a little bit about me. So I'm the curatorial and browse gardener for the zoo, which basically means that I'm managing the overview of the collection, like where plants are, what they are, how old they are, how are they doing, and a lot of the different like tree trimming work on site or the grass cutting. I'm part of that entire crew. We have about 15 people that are managing our 710, 720 acre site. So lots and lots to do all the time, but we are constantly going. And that's what I love about the job, is that we're continually pushing and doing all these different things all the time. This is just one of the different pavilions on site that I'm able to get to work in. So as we come down here too, you can kind of see we've got our orchid wall here. So all the orchids are starting to bloom this time of year. Everything is just looking pretty and pink and white and yellow. So many different colors and textures. There's even some small ones here. If you look at this little guy, smallest to largest here. Look at that little guy just up against my fingernail. There's like tiny, tiny blooms all the way to the big ones. So we really try and showcase that diversity that the world has. There's so much going on, and it's so much fun to play around with here. I think I have a pretty darn good job when I look at how many different things I get to work with. On the other side here, we have our cacti bed, all the different cacti and succulents, and a couple fun little kind of figurines in there and stuff like that. We do like to have fun in here and play around a little bit to see how plants grow. So you'll probably see a couple of those kind of guys throughout the entire place. And all of these cacti as well, you know, cacti are really, really cool. They like really dry conditions, but it's about sharply draining, right? They don't need to sit in water. So we actually had to change the whole soil mix here and make sure that it's really well draining and dry so that when we water, it doesn't actually stick with the water. We're not stuck in it, right? Because the last thing they want is wet feet. They don't like to sit in soil too long that's really wet. So this whole bed is specialized just for cacti. And that's a great way to showcase them because now they're all living their best life, right? As we come around the corner, you know, just take a moment. We'll just turn around and look right back and see how far we've come so far. That is the one greenhouse out of 3 of them here that we have that are all connected in. So you look at it, it's very formal. You know, there's these beautiful orchids blooming right now. The cacti are very cool. And then as we kind of walk around the corner here, you're in a whole different world. This is like our tropical zone, right? There's plants hitting you off to the side. There's tons and tons going on in here. So then as we look down this house, we have on the left-hand side here, this is kind of our rainforest bed, our tropical ornamental bed. So there's things like bromeliads, which are these little guys here. So you see these guys. So they have a little patch of water in the center here, and there's tons of different types. So like this one down here is a bromeliad. There's colors and textures everywhere. And they actually are in the forest canopy. And they just sit in there in the like crotches of trees where they're up in the little nooks and crannies, and they just keep growing out. So you see this here, this cool like bump out. They make more and more of themselves, and they just keep jumping out. They're really, really cool. But this section has a lot of water to it. It's humidity, it's mist, it's moisture. So that part is really, really cool. This is one of my favorite sections. And again, like these orchids are all throughout right now. February is a really cool time to come to the zoo because there's lots and lots of orchids blooming. That's their time when light has gone to its lowest level and it's starting to come up on the other side. It's gotten a little cooler in the greenhouse. We cool it down for them. It triggers a lot of different blooms. So definitely a fun time to come to the zoo. On this side of things, on your right, this is what we call the plants and people section. So we really, like, I've been in my job here for about 2 years so far, 2.5 years. I was fascinated by how many stories there are about plants and people and how we connect. So like, I don't know if you guys at home have ever seen this. Have you ever had it's called a banana? Yeah. So there's bananas down there, and there's so many different types of bananas in the world. You just get to eat 1 or 2 of them in your grocery stores because that's what's shipped all over the place. But they're here in the greenhouse. We have different types. You can kind of see them down at the end there. Yeah. And it's just so cool what your produce actually looks like, where you get your food from, right? Then as we go down, there's like ferns. You know, when you think about the gas in your parents' car at home, all of these are prehistoric ferns. So millions of years ago, that whole system of like plants, that's where a lot of these fossil fuels come from. And these guys are like prehistoric looking ferns, and they're so cool.
Jesse, I think this is when we would chime in the Jurassic Park music for us as well. There we go.
Jesse, I see. So you're the professional vocalist for the day.
Of course, of course.
So as we come down here too, I don't know if you guys probably don't drink coffee, but your parents might. So these plants here are actually the coffee trees that we have. So those guys in the back, my manager here up against the wall, he actually brought in his old coffee maker. He's definitely not that old, but he definitely, you put coffee beans in the top and you spin the little lever and it grinds them up for you. So you're ready for your morning cup of coffee. He was very excited to show it off. And actually here too, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but we have one of the coffee trees out that's actually showing the pods right now. So I love showing it to people. So you can see, this is how coffee grows. These are the little coffee beans. And if I just pull one of those off here and I can pop it open, whoa, that's a coffee bean right there. So that's not roasted or anything. That's fresh off the tree. And that's what they look like. And if I throw this back in the pot, we actually got a lot of seedlings out of them. So we've planted them in the gardens to see how they grow, because they're really slow growing and that's how they develop. But they grow into this huge tree, which is really, really cool. As we come in this section, this is kind of the unique to the zoo section, right? A lot of this stuff, botanical gardens, different places in the world, a lot of these plants are very well represented there, right? One of the things at the zoo that makes us a little bit unique is that we feed our animals what's called browse. Have you guys heard of browse before?
Jesse, let's see if anyone in the comments maybe knows, but we've talked about it a little bit on past programs, so there might be a few.
It's not a really common term that we hear in a lot of our Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants programs, but if you are on the Zoo Facebook page or our YouTube page or Mr. Hancock's class live with us, if you've heard of browse, let us know in the chat. I would say that I only heard of browse as an adult, and I studied a lot of things when I was a kid, so it's not a term that I've heard a lot of. Nope, we got a few no's coming in. Nope. So tell us more about browse, man.
This is my favorite time then. So what I like to think of browse, it's easy for me to think of, like, have you ever been to the grocery store with your parents? You walk around, so you know how you're browsing the aisles, you're looking all around you, a little bit here. Oh, what's going on? Oh, something over here, something over here. Now imagine you're a giraffe, something like that, right? You're going along, you're nibbling a little here. Yeah, we got the giraffe. You just nibble a little bit of a branch here, you go to the next one. Oh, browsing again, a little bit of that. So browse is actually when animals are eating those edible components of plants. It tends to be a lot of leaves, but it can be bark, it can be twigs and stem. And that's how they're getting their nutrients in. So they're browsing, eating all those tree branches. And that's what I love to see. So my background, I did my undergraduate degree in zoology, but I did my master's degree in animal nutrition here at the zoo. And this was kind of like my favorite thing to do, was always that interaction between plants and animals and how they're constantly connected in terms of what they're eating, what's growing, how they're interacting with each other is so cool to me. So this section at the zoo is actually our interior space that is all about browse production. It's about growing as much as we can for the animals that we have here on site. Obviously, I've said giraffe. Can anyone think of any other browsing animals that you would think of? Anything that eats trees, shrubs, leaves?
Yeah. I think in Canada, our big one is certainly deer. When I think of something that goes around and eats a lot of plant life, deer comes to mind.
Deer, we got moose in Canada. Moose are huge, right?
We go to national parks right down the road from me, and they talk about moose doing so much browsing that they end up affecting the entire ecosystem. So this is a big issue here in Newfoundland. We've got elephant coming in. We've got a few other African animals. Fantastic, guys. So a lot of those big herbivores are browsers, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. It's awesome. So I'm even thinking of the gorillas, right? The gorillas eat a lot of vegetation. They love this stuff. So one of their big things is these guys right here. This is a type of ginger. So see this here? It actually smells like the roots of it. You can actually see the roots down here. I don't know if you guys have ever had ginger in a recipe at home, but the ginger is actually the roots of the plant here. And that's what we harvest for human food. We like to use it as like a spicy kind of tangy thing. It's in a lot of really cool cuisine. But for the animals, they eat the greenery part. That's what the gorillas love most. They actually do these little vocalizations. They like to just sit there and go, nom, nom, nom. Like they just sit there and hum away, right? So that's really, really cool to see, because they tend to do it for things they really like. If you and I just like a little bit here and there, it's okay. But this for them is like, that's their favorite food. So again, look back at where we've come from here. We've gone through a whole tropical zone, lots and lots going on down there. And now we're going to go to the third house. We're going to turn around the corner here. I'm going to get hit in the head with a couple plants. They're everywhere. Like, it's about being surrounded. So as we come into this zone, Now you can look all the way down. We've got our living walls on the right-hand side. So all these plants are actually in the wall here, and they're living and breathing all together, kind of combining, jumping around. So it's very, very different in terms of the zone, right? One of the things we like to talk about, and it was really important to me when we were talking about the space and how to make it really fun for people to see everything. This section here, a lot of people don't realize that our zoo, when you look at all the garden beds in the summer season, there's a lot of tropical plants in there that aren't native to Canada, right? They're not going to survive our winters, like bananas and stuff like that. So we need somewhere to store them over the winter. We don't want to throw them out at the end of the year. You don't want to just buy it once and forget about it. These are living things too. So all these guys here are plants that go out every year, and then we pot them up and bring them back inside for the winter so they can live out their days in this nice little spa that we've got going on. And then we put them back out in the summer into the garden beds where they get all the sunlight they could ask for. They get repotted. And it's just a great way of kind of showcasing all the world's kind of flavors, colors, textures, all that cool stuff. This section is where the most stuff is going on in terms of its diversity. There's everything's in pots here. This is called our seed studio, but it's where all of our plants are coming for, rehab. We're going to go if you need to clean up anything, if you want to start propagating for the summer. So that's what, does anyone know what the word propagating means?
Ooh, let's chime in with that. Again, you guys have been pretty good. The Zoo Facebook audience, you guys are really quick on the trigger finger, which is fantastic. So propagate, maybe some of our gardeners in the crowd will know this. I know what propagate is, but I want to see if our classes have any thoughts on this. Put it in the chat. What do we think? Grow new plants, put out new plants, put seeds in. Okay, it looks like they've got a little bit of a sentence.
I think your audience has it figured out. So this is one of my favorites. I just did these a couple weeks ago, but these guys are a couple of the succulents from our succulent bed. We just took a leaf off here. And if I actually pull this up here, I don't know if I can make it look any better, but this is a little plant that's growing on it. Those are roots coming down, going this way. And there's just a little top on it there. That's the new plant coming in. So the leaf can actually propagate from that little stem. And so we've done a bunch of them here because we're just trying to get some started to fill out the cacti bed, all the succulents that are in there. It's nice to have a bunch of them all on the ground. As we go through here, we've got some cacti in the back. We've got all these tropicals. This is like a pink princess philodendron here. They're very beautiful. I'm sure a lot of people like them in their homes, right? They're very colorful. I'm a little biased, but this is one of my hot peppers from home that I had in my garden in the summer. They don't survive in our climate in Canada, but if you bring them inside every year, the pepper plants can actually grow for like 8 years, 10 years, and they get really woody stems. So you see the difference here between greenery, like this is new growth all up here, this is green. And as you go down, all the way down, you see how it turns into like a trunk of a tree here. They're really, really cool. So these guys, that's when they get old enough, they start getting really barky and all that stuff is really good. It just means that they're getting old. So my manager, he's really into making bonsai trees, which are those small, kind of compressed, compacted plants. So I brought those in because I want to try it myself. I wanted to see how long we could make one. It's going to be really cool. I can see some of my carnivorous plants here. So this is something I'm really passionate about and I'm really getting into more. And that's something that's so cool about this space is you're constantly able to learn, right? There's all new things all the time to learn. But these guys are like, does anyone know what this might be? Has anyone seen one of these before?
Ooh, I've seen one of those before. I saw one of those the other day. It's one of my favorite plants in the whole world. Anyone want to chime in? Little spiky ends, big sort of things. We've got, I think they've got it. Venus flytrap. Yes, it certainly looks like that.
Nice. So this is a Venus flytrap, and these are carnivorous plants. So it means that they eat insects as a form of nutrients, right? So we've got ones like this, the Venus flytraps, but there's even other ones. These are types of pitcher plants. And it's such a cool thing because people think, these are very tropical. They must be from down south. There are ones like this that live in Canada. They actually live way up north in Ontario in our peatlands area, all the bog areas, the really wet soil. They like really wet climates. And this is what they'll grow into. And every year they go through that. We think it's cold right now, -20. They can go a lot colder than that. I don't think I could handle being one of these guys. But they are such cool plants. Even something like this. These guys are doing really well right now. These are called butterworts. So the Latin name is like pinguicula, right? But what they do is they have a really cool kind of year adaptation. One, their flowers are really cool right now. They're very, very pretty. But when you look at their leaves, they photosynthesize. So they actually get energy from light half the year. But what happens is when the light goes down and they're not getting as much light in the winter, their leaves get a little sticky. So on top of it, it gets sticky, and they can actually trap insects on top of it. I can even see a couple little insects right there getting stuck. So that's how they get their nutrients the other half of the year. Again, plants are really, really cool. If there's anything, oh no, if there's anything I want you to take away from it today, plants are really, really cool. There's lots going on in here. This is also one of my favorite areas. I mean, I know I say that about everything, but we just have some hanging baskets here with some other house plants and Hoyas and stuff. So they're just really, really fun, and I'm loving watching them grow. So with that, I mean, we're coming near the end of the garden here in the greenhouse. Do you guys have any questions? Jesse?
We're going to dive in with Q&A in just a second, man. Your passion is so palpable. That was spectacular. Thank you so much for the walkthrough, and what a beautiful space you have. We're going to dive in with a little Kahoot first, and if you want to help us out with some of these questions, some relate to some of the things you talked about. Some are just cool things about plants in general that we're going to make sure our audience goes home with. But if you want to bring up that Kahoot pin, again, it is 548870. We are going to dive in with this in just a second. And then all your questions, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can chime in the chat there with your questions anytime. Mr. Hancock's class, we're going to head to you live for some questions. So combined, we're going to get in 10, 15 questions over the course of the next little bit. If you're new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. And what you win is Ben, Mary Ellen, and I's everlasting respect. So that is worth quite a bit. We are going to dive in with this and get underway. And if you want to just yell out the answers at home, you are more than welcome to do that as well. Here we go. Our greenhouse adventure in 3, 2, 1. Let's see. Question 1. The tallest tree in the world can reach how high? So today we've been in the greenhouse. We don't have really tall plants in there. But if we were to go check out the tallest tree in the world, Ben, 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet, or over 300 feet. Any hints you want to give us?
Oh, I mean, taller might be better.
Yeah. So we had one person say 100 feet. Most of you got it right, over 300 feet. So skyscrapers in Toronto, skyscrapers in New York, many of them are at the same height as some of the biggest trees, the redwoods, eucalyptus, sequoia. Like these are monstrous, some of the biggest organisms ever to exist on planet Earth. Let's see where that takes us as we go to question 2. All right, more of you feel free to join in as well, 548870. Some plants eat animals. I got a picture here of a pitcher plant. We talked about this a little bit. I'm really glad you took us to some of these. In Newfoundland, where I am, we have tons of pitcher plants. And so, yes, there's a bevy of different plants that eat animals. I'd say, Ben, I don't know what you feel, but like the Venus flytrap is probably the coolest because of the hair trigger mechanism, but they're all pretty neat.
Oh, I think all of them are pretty neat, but I'm pretty biased. I like working with all of them here.
All right, Brave Raccoon keeps our lead as we go to question 3. Plants have been around for how long? I've given some reference points here. 7 million years, as old as the first human ancestors. We have no idea. We just don't know. 240 million, as old as dinosaurs, or approximately 450 million years, as old as sharks. When do we get our first plants on land? Let's see. Get those answers in. Again, bigger is better if you've ever done a Kahoot with me before. So yes, plants are really, really old. The dinosaurs had to eat something, and they had to eat plants. Everything that's been on land has had to eat plants. And so they were here before we have things coming up onto land as sort of a food base for everything. Brave Raccoon keeps our lead. Might not be invincible. Where are places plants can't live? So we talked about some really special plants today. But Ben, can plants not live in the desert? Can they not live in the Arctic tundra? Can they not live underwater? Or none of the above? They can live everywhere, all those places. What do we think? Get those answers in. I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to think of the places we don't have plants in the world. So none of the above is our correct answer. Plants can live in deserts, the tundra, underwater for certain. There are no plants at the bottom of the ocean, like deep, deep down. And there's no plants in the middle of like Antarctica. But other than that, we have plants everywhere, to my knowledge.
Yeah, they're pretty good at adapting. Like Ben was saying, even some plants we think as being tropical, if they live in an area that they have to adapt to that weather, then they're going to live there.
Very, very cool. Well, Brave Raccoon wins our Kahoot. Thank you so much for playing along with that. And we're going to dive in with questions now. So please, if you're on YouTube, Facebook, share your questions in the chat. Anything you want to know about plants, we are going to head to Georgetown to Mr. Hancock's class to kick us off with our Q&A. Welcome in, guys, and take us away.
Hey, we got a bunch of brave raccoons here who are wondering, how do you take care of so many plants? How do you water them? How do you make sure they don't overgrow? How do you keep them all in check?
Okay, I love this question because that's something when people come to the zoo, I mean, maybe it's weird, but they're looking at the animals a lot of the time. They're not really thinking as much about the background, right? And that's what something called plant blindness is that I get really passionate about, because people look at these guys as it's like an object in the background. They're not living things on their own, but they so are. So when you're looking at all these plants in here, one, we are constantly watering, checking, maintaining, pruning. So all of that stuff is happening in here, but that's also why we designed the greenhouse the way it is. You know, a coffee tree like this or an orchid like this, all the way to the cacti, they're not the same. I can't water them exactly the same. I can't give them the same amount of sunlight. So all of that has to be kind of just touch base, changed up a little bit. That's what things like this above. So when you see above us here, you see that shade cloth. There's just a cloth over our head here. So that's actually to help block the light if it's too bright, because some plants just can't handle that bright light. And all of this, one of the cool parts of our renovation that I don't get to show people every day unless I really pull them into the back, there's a computer system that's actually running all of our systems now. So I'm able to say temperature, you know, I want it within this range for the greenhouse so that my plants are doing well. The shade cloth, there's actually a sensor on the roof. So it says, oh, there's too much sun. You know, Ben said, don't go above this level. So we're going to close up all that shade cloth. And each house is different. So based on what we've put in each of the houses, all of that's going to change, right? So I'm able to have them all independently opening and closing. The fans will go, you know, we've kind of turned down the heaters right now just so I can hear you guys. But the heaters will be going on these timers to make sure that everything is at the right temperature and everything. And then on top of that, we have humidity sensors. So that's water in the air, right? To see how much water these plants need. And the humidity in the air is everything. So something like an orchid, right? I don't know if you can see underneath here. You see that root? So they don't really need soil like you'd think some plants, but this stuff right here, that root is just crawling out because they get a lot of their nutrients and their water from the air around them because they're from really humid spaces. And so that's what we have to do is make sure we're misting them. We're keeping that humidity up pretty well, right? So it's a constant process, but that's why our staff are so qualified. They're running around. It can be a little crazy in the summer to keep up with it. I don't know if you guys know at home how fast grass grows, but it is insane. Right? It'll just keep us busy all summer. But all of this is something that we're always doing. That's why we're such a big group of professionals trying to keep up with all this. It's a full-time job.
Awesome, Ben. Thanks, man. And a great follow-up question, too. So Alexis in Hamilton wants to know if there's a most challenging thing, especially since it's currently winter. Now, you just talked about summer maybe being a challenging time. Is there a most challenging time to care for the plant and something that really keeps you up at night?
So, yeah, I mean, the winter can be really interesting in Canada, right? Our heaters are everything. So if something goes wrong, you know, the electrical system changes and it's something, say there's a power outage, right? I'm sure all of you have had that happen at home at some point in time. If that goes on here, that's the difference between life and death. So that can keep you up at night a little bit, but we have these backup generators as the zoo to make sure that we have power for these heaters all the time. So even if we're not here and the power goes out, something's going to happen. There's a guy on call all night long that's walking around the zoo, making sure that all the systems are working well. The thing that maybe stresses me out the most in terms of a plant, in terms of a challenge, is the corpse flowers, right? I don't know if you've seen one of those before. They're really stinky blooms. We can kind of walk down here and I'll show you what I look at. It's not that cool when it's looking like it is right now, but they are such a cool adaptation and change up. So if I'm sitting on this bench here and I look at this pot, this looks like nothing to you guys, right? Is there a plant here? No, there's nothing in here. But what it is this is actually the plant right here. So it's perfect. It actually came right out. So this is a corpse flower. When it's actually alive, it's a big green leaf. All that energy, though, half the year goes by, it goes right into this. This is called a corm. So it's an underground tuber. It's like a potato. And so it puts all its energy in there. This whole part, gone. That's what it looks like for half the year. Very, very stressful when you don't see it in the soil and you're like, where is it? Where is it? You got to figure out, you got to be patient. You got to know what you're talking about with these guys so that you're like, okay, it's under there. It's good until next year. I just have to wait my time. And that can be the hardest part, is being patient with your plants. But that's something that is so cool about horticulture, is your whole timeline for life. It's not like you or I. If I eat a meal 3 times a day, I might want a snack later, but I'm happy, right? With a plant, you could give them a full meal today, fertilize and everything. It's going to take a couple days for you to notice what's going on with it. So you have to be patient. You can't just keep watering, hoping for the best. You might drown your plant, which can happen.
Thank you so much, man. This is great. Let's take one from Miss Riddle's group. They wanted to know, they missed the beginning. So why are we growing all these plants? Is it for habitats for animals? Is it for food for animals? Does it have nothing to do with the animals at the zoo? Tell us a little bit more again.
Yeah, so welcome aboard. Thanks for joining in. This section right here, this is producing all the food for a lot of the animals on site. A lot of it does tend to go to our insects because a lot of insects they're considered essential browsers. That's like, this tree is the majority of their diet. They're not eating much else other than this tree. So we do a lot of that production. On top of that, it's a big portion of it is education, right? I don't know how often people in Canada actually get to see a banana tree growing to full size to fruit. We actually have one fruiting in Australasia right now. And it's really, really cool. But not everyone gets to see that. So having that awareness of where your food comes from, where your products come from, even like a cotton or something like that, being able to have this tropical space really connects people with plants so that you see it beyond just the product at the end of the day, right? And on top of that, this is just a lovely space. There's a lot of studies out there that are showing how your mental stress, we've all gone through COVID. That was a horrible time. This is being shown to be more and more essential to how you manage your stress and you calm down because you're in nature. All these things are living around you. There's oxygen, there's all this beautiful humidity that actually helps us too, when your house gets dry in the middle of winter. All of that's a benefit. And so having this available to the public is really, really cool.
It certainly is. I got the chance again to visit in person, seeing some of these plants. Coffee, for instance, that you highlighted a few times throughout the broadcast is so neat because you don't think about it. You sort of think about it as this end product, and to see it as an actual plant, something that grows out of the soil that you can conceivably come up with yourself is really, really special. So thanks, man. We're going to take a few more. Time flies and you're having fun in these broadcasts. I'm going to head to Mr. Hancock's class again. If you've got a second question for us, come on in. Take us away.
Absolutely. We're feeling the same thing. We've been stuck indoors, indoor recesses for 3 days. We don't have any plants around us.
Oh, no.
We're feeling it in here. Speaking of the Venus flytrap, a couple students are wondering how exactly do they digest the fly and get the nutrients from it?
Ooh.
Okay, so with Venus flytraps, it's actually really cool. So they do create like an acid or like an enzyme that does break down the tissue that's going to be in the insect. But what's really cool about them is when you got a Venus flytrap opening and closing like this, so they're open, the fly goes in, hits the little trigger hairs, it closes up, and it actually like seals the edge around it. So it almost creates like a stomach. Right? It's making its own little stomach. And then all that nutrients, as it's rotting down, it's absorbing through its cells behind it, going into the plant, and it's feeding itself, pushing, right? So it's such a cool mechanism, but it's very unique.
They're certainly fascinating. I really encourage you to check out some Venus flytrap videos. BBC's done a few special ones on how the hair trigger mechanism to close works to begin with. I'll try and find those and send it to you guys, Mr. Hancock, because they're just so special. Ben, we've got an easy or potentially very hard one for you, which is, do you have a favorite plant? Is there anything that jumps out to you?
We practiced for this moment.
If I wasn't my hair already, you would have taken all my hair out because this is a hard question for me to answer. I personally, this whole world that I've been in here, like I'm pretty immersed in it right now. But I remember days of having some houseplants at home that I really, really loved. So personally, the section down here, if you guys want to follow me, I can show you one or two that I really like.
It's hard to pick favorites, but when you're around them long enough, every once in a while, a favorite or two does pop up.
As I say, there's no favorites, but this one right here is my favorite.
Yeah.
So this one right here, I'll pull out. This one is one of my favorites. It's called a pregnant onion. And it's not actually related to the onions. It's just about that storage organ. It's just funny that way. But what it is the reason it's called a pregnant onion is because underneath all of these layers, there's actually little babies that pop out. So as it grows and changes, see that right there? Like if I peel that back, all those little babies there are popping out. And that right there, that's the baby. It drops down to the ground and makes a new one. And that's why it's such a big cluster. And they're really easy in the home. They're really, really cool. And they also have fantastic blooms. So it's really fun to see them. There's actually one blooming over here right now. So I took all the little babies from one that we were propagating and I threw them in this basket here. And if you follow a stem all the way down to the end here, that's the flower, right? So it's very, very cool. It's very, very pretty. You know, just such a different flower, and it's such a hardy plant too. So for me, that's really cool. Like having an easy plant that you can just appreciate kind of hanging out with also really helps me.
Ben, I honestly, this has been so much fun. It's so nice to see someone who's just so passionate about what they do. It really shines through, and all our audience said the same. Before we wrap up, I'm going to come to you for one final question in a minute on the same sort of note, but I want to stress for our audience at home, if you're new to plants, if you've never done a plant program before, if you've never thought that they were as exciting as they certainly are, I really encourage you. The Light Eaters by Zoe Schlager is a spectacular book, one of the best books of the year on every single thing, to see sort of the cutting edge of plant research. And The Green Planet on BBC, which I also own but did not bring up for this broadcast, is just the best documentary series to highlight some really incredible stories in the world of plants. I can't recommend them enough. And Ben, that's what I wanted to leave you with too, to share with us, is if there's any place you'd recommend for our kids to go exploring, to learn more about the zoo's greenhouse, about plants in general, anywhere to keep their enthusiasm lit in the days and weeks to come.
Yeah, so it's actually perfect. I'm right near the sign that we have at our exit here. So we have actually a zoo Instagram page, right, for our greenhouse. You know, forgive me, I didn't shave that day, but we're over here. We have a QR code here. And this is our zoo greenhouse page, where basically what we're doing day to day, we're trying to throw some pictures up there and show you just what's happening in every season that we go through. On top of that, the Toronto Zoo page in general has tons and tons of cool stuff. I know that Jesse has partnered a lot with the zoo, so there's tons of knowledge about the zoo out there and these crazy videos, because there's tons and tons going on. This is just a little slice of everything that's going on here. So definitely, if you ever want to come to the zoo, come on down. We'd love to have you. And I'll try and be around the greenhouse when you show up.
Amazing. Ben, Mary Ellen, thank you so much for your passion, expertise, all of it, at Zoo Greenhouse on Instagram, thetorontozoo.com if you want to check out more there as well. And we'll make sure to get this video file to you folks to cut and edit and throw up stuff on the amazing Zoo Greenhouse Instagram as much as possible. I'm going to say a big thank you to you, and then all our audience at home, Mr. Hancock's class as well. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now, guys. See you all soon, everyone.